Have you ever asked yourself, am I destined to do this for the rest of my life? Is this the only path I could take? Can I choose to change my career this late in life? There was a time I had to ask myself those very questions. It was a pivotal point in my life, but only the first of many, where I needed to empower myself to make a change necessary to find fulfillment, joy, and happiness, and become truly present with those most important to me. The time we have on this earth is limited. Wouldn't you want to be happier with the time you have? Maybe it's time for a change. This is the Buckets of Change podcast. Hey there, everyone. I am Nick Goblirsch, and thank you for taking the time to listen, download, or subscribe to the Buckets of Change podcast. I'm very excited to be here. It's a Saturday afternoon, and I recently launched the Buckets of Change podcast, changing the Pain for Thought podcast, this amazing evolution of mine, and now I am doing a brand new podcast that's going to have a little different vibe, a little different focus, also including a lot more guests than my previous Pain for Thought podcast. I am recording this not only on audio, which you'll be listening to this on your podcast player, wherever you subscribe to your favorite podcast, but also I'm recording a video as well that will be published on YouTube. I hope that works out. I'm trying something very, very new. When I did my first podcast, the Dependent Independent podcast, which still exists on your podcast player, I had a TV studio several years back down in the basement. It was really high tech. It was awesome. It was when I was making my corporate dollars. I was spending a lot of money on Amazon. And now that I'm starting it up again, I'm doing it on the economic cheap and making sure that I can present perfectly by video in my office. So for those of you joining me on video on YouTube, thank you for hanging out. This podcast, this second episode of the Buckets of Change podcast, I wanted to talk about progress because what I just explained to you is, as much as it's not where I want it to be, it's still progress. And I've been thinking a lot, not only about how I am currently painting as a house painter for my company, the iHeart Painting brand. I am also in the midst of switching careers. Now, I work with and discuss the idea of changing careers with a lot of folks and understanding how that change really affects individuals, both spiritually, personally, professionally, internally, externally, the whole gamut. And I've done that. I left a corporate career as an HR executive at the peak of my career and then decided that I really needed to focus on something that provided a lot more time and joy and peace of mind that I can be present with my family on the weekends and not having to worry about work on Monday when I was home on Friday and dreading all that stuff. I am doing it again and making a transition so I can, in essence, share my message with you on these podcasts, but also speaking on a stage and working with individuals that, for whatever instance they're coming to see me, to understand that it's never too late to make a significant change in your life that will introduce a little bit more happiness and joy and, in essence, build you into someone that people want to be around and that you are present and enjoying the life that you have, because the time that we have is super limited in the grand scheme of things. And we need to cherish that and make sure we make the best of it. At least that's what I think and I believe my mission is to the individuals that I talk to. But I've been thinking a lot, and it's easy to do this when you're on a painting job, is your mind drifts in thinking, what am I going to do next? Or especially as an entrepreneur, what's the next opportunity that's coming by? But in order to get that next opportunity, I really have to finish this opportunity. And those are the thoughts we get inside our own head. But also anyone would strive to let other individuals see the progress we're making. And I was having a conversation in the midst of those thoughts, having a conversation with a friend of mine, an entrepreneur friend of mine named Allison Gallagher. She is a professional life coach, but she also runs a photography studio called Allison Ann Studios. And she and I bounce ideas off each other as we go through the entrepreneurial journey, because it is constantly a journey. And we were talking about how we celebrate wins and how we celebrate the accomplishments that we want the world to see. Now, one should never get really hung up on external validation. We should really feel how we celebrate our wins internally. But it is kind of fun when people on the outside, close family, friends, people celebrate you. I mean, that's really great. That's, in essence, that's why I put my pictures of my painting projects on my Instagram and Facebook, to let folks know, look what I did. I'm really excited. And again, it helps with marketing, but it also is a great way to share those successes. When you make a choice to pursue something that requires an amount of work, whether it be starting your own business or changing careers mid-career, or really stepping out of your comfort zone and trying a career that no one ever thought you'd pursue, pursuing a passion, or looking in your organization to change the company that you work at, to change a job, like drastically change a job. You get in the habit of sharing that journey with others. But what they hear, I think others hear, is usually the destination. If you say, I'm going to change careers and be successful, they want to see the success, and you end up at that career, or at least they're going to recognize success and validate that success when they see the end. And the irony is, whenever you choose to do all those things, it is an extremely lonely place. I tell clients that you have to almost give yourself permission to be lonely, because no one's ever going to really understand the tribes and tribulations and things that you're doing, both internally and externally, to get to where you need to be. A homeowner doesn't really pay attention to the prep work I do. They just want to see the end result. And it's lonely because you can't share or naturally share your progress with others in real time. It's not something that I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's individuals out there that complain about why things aren't working the way they should be. But both my friend Allison and I are very forward-thinking people. We set ourselves on an expectation and a goal, and we kind of run with it and do whatever we need to do to accomplish it. But I'm noticing recently that I'm not seeing that end result, especially with now working with representation, and I'm appearing on several podcasts, but I'm moving forward as I'm building my program to be on a stage and do that. And it's something that just hasn't happened yet. So I found myself lamenting on thinking that I should be here, or it would be great if I was here, or it would validate my efforts if I was able to show the people on the outside that I'm actually doing it, because I did communicate to several people that I was shifting to becoming a professional speaker and a career change coach and a change management coach, working for corporations and all these things. And it's exciting. But then the rubber meets the road and you actually have to put the work in. And I am really doing a lot of things, like for any of you that decide to do something that you've never done before, you introduce yourself to a lot of things that you might have heard of it, like create a landing page or creating all these types of things that you hear other people do. And now suddenly you have to do it. And it's hard. You stumble, you try new things, you make mistakes, you get feedback that's extremely constructive from the people you trust that you reach out to. And that's a big thing too. Anytime going through change, make sure you're reaching out and requesting feedback from people that aren't going to judge you and going to give you objective feedback that is really helpful, that you can use. So I started thinking, like, how come I'm not making any progress? And in my brain, I was so fixed on progress would be like the end, being able to show people the end. And the irony is that's not how it works. That's not how, if we measured our success on finish lines, how many times do people do something where they fail? Even ourselves, even you listening or watching, you don't find that I'm assuming if you feel successful and have accomplished much, you've also failed a lot. So you've tried a lot of things that haven't worked out. And I forced myself, it was like 4 weeks ago when I'm like, Nick, or I grabbed my phone and I started talking into my phone on a voice memo or my notes app and saying, sometimes you have to just celebrate progress for progress. Like any step you take forward towards a goal or an accomplishment, it is progress. And you should celebrate it no matter how good or bad or indifferent it is. So I've changed my mindset. Like I didn't really quite understand what I was doing back when I started my painting business. Like I wish I could go back and like educate myself on all those things. But now I get to do that with you listening and you watching, and be able to maybe create some more positive self-talk to say, listen, maybe you should just celebrate progress for progress's sake. So now every time I take a step forward, every time I do something more than what I did yesterday, I celebrate it internally. And I don't need other people to tell me or wait for them, not tell me, but wait for them to say, good job, Nick, you're making something different, or you're accomplishing the goal that you shared with me. I've always been, even in my corporate life, I've always shared my professional goals with my team. I've written it down for myself, because once you do that, you accept responsibility for the efforts and the results, and now have to own up to it and hold yourself accountable. But there are times in this long process of building something new from one career to another, and you'll experience this as well if you choose to change careers midstream, you need to really, 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 really take a step back and realize that winning is just taking one step forward. Progress is progress. So I wanted to take some time today to record this brief podcast just to tell you that if you are in the midst of doing something you've never done before and are getting downtrodden because you're not where you think you should be, if you sat on your hands and complained all day and made tons of excuses why things weren't happening, I think you did yourself a huge disservice, because you will feel much more motivated and much more energized to take more steps if you decide to celebrate any progress, no matter what it is, no matter how many times you stumbled, how many times you screwed up, how many times you did something wrong, and all the times you do something right or did something to build momentum to do something else. You should celebrate the hell out of it. And I'm telling you, you'll be less lonely because you'll be celebrating, even though you might be a party of one, because, again, you're in your own head, you're doing your own thing. It is way easier and much more satisfying to do that, because each step is one step in that direction where others will see that progress and see that. And trust me, it does feel good to get some external validation. It is great for those people closest to you to see that you're doing well and see the fruits of your labor. So next time you find yourself lonely in an effort to accomplish a goal, just celebrate progress for progress sake. Guys, thank you for listening to and watching this episode 2 of the Buckets of Change podcast. I got to get used to saying that. You can follow me on my Instagram, Facebook. I'm in the process of building so many more things, so stay tuned and follow the links in the show notes. Buckets of Change, at Buckets of Change on Instagram. And feel free, if you're an individual that is struggling with progress and you have some doubts that you're actually making headway in the efforts that you're doing, feel free to send me an email and talk about it. I'd love to share your story on my show in future episodes. I'm in the midst of doing this on a regular basis. I'm not quite sure what day these podcasts are going to publish, but if you're watching this, make sure you subscribe, whether it be on your podcast player, and rate the show. That helps others see my podcast. And if you're on YouTube and you're watching this on video, which is new, I'm doing both at the same time, make sure you subscribe, so each and every time I post a new episode, you'll get notified, and hit the bell. You'll get notified, and then you can either listen to me with your phone in your pocket, or just simply watch the video. Guys, thanks for listening and watching to the Buckets of Change podcast. I'm Nick, your host, and I will talk to you very, very soon.